A very good morning to everyone. My name is Kishore Pillai, son of Ravindran. I'm a student from UMP and my metric ID is MA21111. As an engineer, I had researched about a lot of invention that been made by human being and the evolution that happens in every type of invention. For example, cars, bicycle, bikes, even fans, televisions, phone to smartphones, and so on. And as one of the inventions that I found interesting was submarine. So today I would love to talk about submarine and how it was built and the evolution and the history that been written in about submarine. So as an introduction, submarine is a watercraft that is capable of doing operation underwater. As we see in many movies, submarine, we can travel in underwater and for researchers and so on. So there are two types of watercraft. One is submarine and another one is submersible. In those days, submarine was called as boats or ship, although its size is very big compared to other boats and so on. And as currently we can see, the biggest submarine in this world is called as Typhoon Glass, which is built by the Russian. Let's talk about submarine. So what is submarine? As we know, in movies we see submarines are very large, one type of boat or ship that travel in underwater and is travel kind of slow and so on. So as we see, according to the research that I done, experimental submarines were built earlier before the real submarine took off the design during the 19th centuries. So as we see, submarines were mostly used in World War One, which is from 1914 to 1918. Submarine used for attacking enemy surface ships, as we see, for example, in the movie King Kong versus Godzilla. They used the submarine to attack the Godzilla and so on, for just example. So let's get back to the slide. And submarines also used for rescue mission and undersea cable repair. For example, in oil and gas, there are many underwater construction were built. So for that use, submarine was the main use for it. And as we see, civilian use it for science and exploration, such as searching about underwater fish, creatures, and so on. And a large submarine will be in a cylindrical body with a hemispherical and ends with a vertical structure. As below down there, we can see uh, the 3D structure of a normal submarine. So as we see, submarine contains sensing device as well as a periscope. For example, where how cars having a back camera and so on. So these type of thing are available in submarine. For them is equal to, like, in underwater, sensing device very important for them to move and so on. So submarine dive and resurface by means of diving planes and changing the amount of water and air in the balance tank to affect their buoyancy. In order to submarine to dive, the main physics, as we studied in physics, the buoyancy of water take the effect of the submarine to sink in the sea. And as we see behind here, there is a propeller at the rear of the submarine and a hydrodynamic control fin, which is which is designed to move the submarine. And as you see, this is the periscope of the submarine, where where people will see the visions through a periscope of outside the sea. Sorry for the technical problem. The same thing is repeating here. And in 1866, Fletch was built as the Chilean government's request by Karl Fletch, a German engineer, and it was the fifth submarine built in the world. So, for as you see, this the history of submarine that was built. And let's talk about the use of submarine in World War One. And forces such as U-boats of Germany saw action in the First Battle of Atlantic, where they sink the RMS Lusitania. The use of submarine, they managed to win many wars in the World War One. As we see outbreak of the war, Germany had only 20 submarines that is available for combat, but they can allow them to operate effectively around entire British coast. And as we see, as the Royal Navy had also had 74 submarines. In August 1940, a flotilla of 10 U-boats sailed from their base in Heligoland to attack the Royal Navy warship in the North Sea, where the first submarine patrol was used on the World War One. The British responded to the German developments in submarine technology with the creation of K-class submarine. And in order to counter the Germans, the British had come up with this submarine technology. And these submarines were notoriously dangerous to operate due to the various design of flaws and maneuverability. As we see, since it was too early to build a submarine, of course it's have a flaws because they have to get used to it and have a proper plan to build it. As you see, this the photo of Akula submarine, first launched in 1907, was the first Russian submarine gonna cruise long distance. So as you see, it's very only a long distance submarine were built in 1907, and this picture shows the German submarine called SMU-9, which sank three British cruisers in less than an hour in September 1914. So this was the one of the historical moment of Germany where they used the submarine to overcome British in September 1914. And let's talk about in World War II what they are done using submarine. Germany used submarine to devastating effect in the Battle of Atlantic, where it attempted to cut Britain's supply routes by sinking more merchant ships than Britain could replace. So as we see, when in World War II, when British tried to improve their loots and safety plus armor, but Germany used submarine to overcome their ships that have been traveling through the sea, and this really hit Britain a lot in the Battle of Atlantic. So U-boats had been upgraded in interwar years. The major innovation was communication, and the communication was the name was the Enigma Cyber Machine. So it was very easy for them to communicate through the submarine at World War II. End of war, almost 3,000 Allied ships, which is equivalent to 175 warships, and 2,825 merchantmen had been sunk by the U-boats, where Germany's U-boat fleet suffered heavy, and where Germany really hit Britain well in that war. But although Germany had some flaws, where Germany's U-boat fleet suffered heavy casualties, losing 793 U-boats and about 28,000 submarines out of 41,000, where a casualty rate of 70% is kinda high for them. So, although they managed to win Britain, but at the same time, Germany had lost a lot. As we see, 340 submarines serve in the US Navy, which nearly 260 were deployed to the Pacific. This was the one of the incident in World War II also. And Japanese attacked Hawaii in December 1941, where they managed to commission 111 boats and 203 submarines from Gato, Balu, and Trench classes. As we see, this is the picture of the Imperial Japanese Navy, which is called as 400 class submarine. And they said that this was the largest submarine of World War II. Just now we talk about the history of submarine that been used in World War and so on. So when it comes to 21st century and current century generation, let's talk about how submarine are used in military in the 21st century. And mine-laying submarines were developed in the early of the part 20th century. It is used for inserting and removing covert agents and military forces in special operations, and especially for intelligence gathering and to rescue aircrew during air attacks on islands, and where the airmen would be told of safe places to crash land so submarine could rescue them. It is not, as we see, the military use submarine for safety reasons. As we see, when, for example, they said when an aeroplane or aircrew has been attacked on a highland, so they will be coordinate where they could land at the emergency site so that the submarine would be near to the crash land, and they could help the aircrew if the aeroplane if the crash happened on the sea. As you see, development of the submarine launch ballistic missile and submarine launch cruise missile gave submarines a substantial and long-range ability to attack both land and sea targets with a variety of weapons, ranging from cluster bombs to nuclear weapons. As we have development of submarine, so they started to input missiles in the submarine in order to improve their safety and attacking range. And the next one is primary defense of a submarine lies in its ability to remain concealed in the depth of ocean. And active sonar uses the reflection of sound emitted from the search equipment to detect submarine. So for defense system in the submarine, they use active sonar, which shows the location of other submarines or other creatures or whatever things that could harm the submarine that is currently in underwater. So this is a picture of German UCI-1 class World War One submarine, where the wires running up from the boat to the conning tower are jumping wires. As we see, these are the wires that is called as wires from the boat to conning tower. As you see, the main purpose at the beginning the submarine was built was for the military and war purpose, safety and so on. And as day goes in the 21st century, even civilians are starting to use the submarine as main purpose of tourism, exploration, and oil and gas platform inspections and pipeline surveys. As we see, the first tourist submarine was August Picard, they name it, and which went to the service in 1964 at Expo 64. And underwater works such as searching for natural or artificial reef structures was one of the purpose of civilian using the submarine in current century. So let's talk about the technology that involves in the submarine, like the physics laws that involves in submarine. So we talk about the buoyancy and trim first. Positively buoyancy condition, weighing less than a volume of water, they would displace if fully submerged, which means like when the buoyant mass is in positive way, and when the buoyant mass is less than a volume of water, it will fully sink in the sea. So as to control the displacement and weight, submarine have the ballast tank over here. You can see the ballast tanks over here, and which can hold varying amounts of water and air. So this ballast tank purpose is to carry water and air so that the submarines can move up and down easily. So as the next point, variable buoyancy pressure vessels is used, which is a type of buoyancy control device that is used by the submarine controllers. And there are two types of control device. One is called MPTs and another one is called DCT. And next point is depth control tanks may be located neither near the submarine center of gravity to minimize the effect of trim. So which means the ballast tanks always will be in the mid so that it will be easy to maintain the equilibrium of the submarine so that it won't be moving easily in water. Like for example, when you say when you want to go up, if the ballast tank is at the front and it won't be horizontally, it won't go up horizontally and it cause imbalance thing happens in submarine. So most of the, I mean all of the ballast tank will be in the middle so that the buoyancy won't affect the movement of the submarine. Submarine in a neutral buoyancy condition are not intrinsically trim stable. To maintain a desired continuidal trim, submarine use forward and aft trim tanks. So these are the tanks they're talking about, this one and this one. And let's talk about the control surface and how do we control the submarine. So let's and hydrodynamic maneuvering is done by several control surface, collectively known as diving planes or hydroplanes. For example, when planes have the wings for flying in order to have good aerodynamic, the same thing submarine have their hydrodynamic planes at the backside of, I mean at the rear of the submarine. So it can be moved to so that it can create hydrodynamic forces when submarines start to move at sufficient speed. Most submarine additionally have four horizontal planes and normally placed on the bow until the 1960s, but often on the sail on the latent design. So the rear control surface can be combined into what has become known as extern and X or an X rudder. So the rear control surface of the submarine is combined with extern or X rudder, which is one type of technology they use to control the submarine. And it's turned out to have several advantages over the traditional cuneiform arrangement, where it can improve maneuverability and horizontally as well as vertically when we use extern or an X rudder. So it could be safer in where two diagonal lines can counteract the other. So this is the picture where USS Sea Wolf ship control panel with yokes for control service, where they check the balance tank at the same time They monitor the movement of the submarine and the way they control submarine. As we see, there's almost like a plane wheel over here. So this called maybe could be the thing that control the submarine. And as we know, there are a lot of type of submarine in this world. So as we see, this is called a ballistic missile submarine, which is using for safety and country safety purpose and so on. As the same also cruise missile submarine, nuclear power attack submarine. So these are the submarines that used in military for safety purpose. And there are also a non-nuclear attack submarine and diesel electric submarine. As you know, as according to research, diesel electric submarine is one of the fast submarine that that ever built, and they are also major submarines where they use for exploration and research. As you see, submarine have lot of technology in that. For example, when a car having a 360 sensors for the safety purpose, at the same time, as we know, it is very hard to communicate or for a vehicle to have a sensor in underwater. So it's very important to have a good sensor. So as a submarine, it has a variety of sensor and depending on its mission. For example, if a military submarine, it have a different sensor, and if for research purpose submarine, it have a different sensor. And modern military submarines rely almost entirely on a suit passive and active sonar to locate targets that could harm them or is any targets that looking suspicious. So how this the active sonar works is there will be a audible ping to generate echoes so that it can reveal objects around the submarine. And it also carry a radar equipment to detect surface ship and aircraft, which means and it will show with what uh, on the sea at the surface of the sea or any aircraft is above the sea and so on. So it shows really good radar because it is very wide. Uh, it can reach a wide view. As we see, periscopes are rarely used except for positioning, fix, and verify context identity. As you see in a radar or a sonar, we only can detect object, but we don't know what type of object is coming to us. So, in order to know that, if let's say there's an aircraft or surface, uh, there's object in aircraft or surface of the water, they'll use a periscope to really know what is the real object is showing in the radar. So as we see, the one of the some visible is DSV Alpine and Russian MRI, where they rely on small active sonar sets, weaving pods to navigate. Where this very small sonar, where maybe they use it for exploration and research. So this is the picture of Alvin in 1978. So the first exploring hydrothermal vents, the rack hanging and the borehole sample containers. So these are the containers where they use it for the research and exploration purpose. So let's talk about the navigation in submarine. Submarine had few navigation aids, but the modern subs have a variety of navigation system. In modern military submarines, they use an initial guidance system for navigation, and what the crew occasion and meanwhile the crew occasionally uses the global positioning system to obtain an accurate position. And for navigation, let's say they also some of them use the periscope, and this periscope is kind of large and more accurate, where it has a retractable tube with a prism system that provides a view of surface. Like how the periscope work is, there will be a prism at the bottom and the top of the periscope so that they can see the upper surface of the submarine. And it's only used in occasionally in modern submarines because for current technology they are using radar and many system is now here. And this is the sample object of the periscope of HMS Oslo. So as we see, it's very hard to communicate in underwater. So let's talk about how they communicate in underwater using submarine. How they communicate in submarine. And there are several systems to communicate with distant command centers or other ship using in submarine. And one of it called VLF, which is very low frequency radio, which can reach a submarine either on a surface or submerged to a fairly shallow depth, which means it only can communicate with ships that is on surface of water or which is in shallow depth, and its maximum is 250 feet it only can communicate with. And when we see the ELF, it is called as extremely low frequency, where it can reach submarine at greater depths and has a very low bandwidth. So extremely ELF is used for a farther communication system. And another communication system they use is Gertrude is used to communicate with other submarines, where it is used to communicate between submarines, and it's basically a sonar telephone underwater, because in the underwater telephone is very hard to be used, so they use a solar telephone between the submarines to communicate. So this antenna of a VLF, where there's a picture from Stanford University, they took it. So this is a sample VLF receiving antenna at Palmer station. So which means the submarine can communicate with through this antenna at the Palmer station. And this one is the aerial view of US Navy Calm Lake, Wisconsin, in the year of 1982, where they use ELF transmitter facility. Like, so this is for long range purpose they use it. So as a conclusion, as we see, human being had invent many type of invention. So submarine is one of the greatest inventions that have been done, and in those days they had put a lot of work to build this submarine. And as a good human being, we must use the current invention wisely and always find a way to develop the current technologies for a better future and for the upcoming generation to explore more things. And as we see, submarine was one of the best vehicle ever built in the world because it has given us more knowledge in order to know about the underwaters, and also it has a very great history in World War One, World War Two, where it's also become a historical vehicle in the records that we had research about. So that's all about submarine that I research about. Thank you so much for spending your time and lending your ears with me. Sorry if I had done any mistake in my presentation. Thank you again.